Good to be in this community once again and to be sharing words of Torah and sitting with you. And a special welcome to those people who are joining for the first time or maybe the second or third time. It's great to be together. So I want to bring words of Torah today from our weekly Torah portion. We are in the book of the Midbar, literally in the wilderness, also known as the book of Numbers. And thank you to Natalie for putting that source sheet in the chat today. And so there's really a phenomenal verse that I was particularly drawn to from the Parsha, but I'll also share that I'm going to read all the sources out loud, so no worries if you don't have access to that visual. But the wonderful thing about this particular part of our Torah portion is that it was also, it also appears kind of in a different version in the book of Exodus. And I was really awakened to these images on the seventh day of Passover, when these pillars of clouds, pillars of fire were described in Parshat B'Shalach, which is the part of the book of Exodus that describes the parting of the Sea of Reeds and coming into freedom. And so if you look at this at the text sheet, our Parsha from chapter 9, book of Numbers, describes on the day that the Mishkan, the place of God's indwelling, was set up, the cloud covered the Mishkan, and in the evening, it rested over the Mishkan in the likeness of fire until morning. When the cloud lifted, the Israelites would set out accordingly, and at the spot where the cloud settled, there they would make camp. So we have this beautiful image of these pillars that guided the Israelites, and that the way this pillar became manifest visually shifted depending on whether it was day or night. So it was a cloud that settled during the day, and at night with this, and I love this, it was in the likeness of fire until morning, our Parsha says. But I've brought this other verse from Exodus and a commentary to kind of take us in a specific direction. And as I read this commentary on Passover, I really have not been able to stop thinking about it. It's been an amazing concept for me, an aspirational concept. And so I want to share it with you today in that spirit. So in the book of Exodus, it says, God went before them, before the Israelites, in a pillar of cloud by day to guide them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, that they might travel day and night. So a little bit different description, but the same concept, the same picture, as it were. And now I want to share a commentary by a wonderful Hasidic commentator known as the Me'ashiloach, also the Ishbitzer Rabbi, and his information, a little bit of biographical, its dates and et cetera at the bottom of this. So he is going to now he's going to pull meaning out about what the pillar of cloud and what the pillar of fire might appear to be for us at first glance, and what we might want to consider it being in an aspirational way. He writes, the pillar of cloud teaches us about fear. Now, this is a very tricky Hebrew word. Yirah literally is translated to mean awe. It is also sometimes translated meaning fear. This can be kind of challenging for us in English because fear definitely connotes one thing for us and awe another. One of the names that we have for the high holy days in the Jewish calendar is Yamim Noraim, literally the days of awe, or the awesome days, or the awe-inspiring days. You can, pick the translation that you like there, but there is this very fine line in Jewish tradition with fear meaning almost a healthy respect for what we're experiencing. And sometimes that can border, yes, on being fearful or awe-filled or awe-inspired. But also it's like it's like something that really gets our attention, like, wow, I didn't know that could be. I didn't know that could exist. I didn't know I could feel this way. Maybe a little bit of sensing the liminal nature of life and death in that moment. So I left that here as fear, but I put that in parentheses almost throughout the translation to keep that idea with us. The pillar of cloud teaches us about fear, yirah or awe, and the pillar of fire teaches us about trust. Okay, well, let's see, how does it exactly do that? He goes on to say, sometimes one's heart is filled with a great sense of trust. This is the experience of the day. And so one needs to increase their awareness of the midah of fear or awe. And I want to just pause here for a moment because this might be kind of puzzling, but think about it. The day is a time where if we have sight, we can see, we might feel a little more confident about what's going on in our lives. The light of day is maybe a more hopeful time for some of us. And it's easier to feel like, I've got this, I'm in charge, I'm capable, I can move forward. And what he's trying to say is, even though the day might be, as I described for you personally, maybe it's not, that's okay too. There's an opportunity to actually increase the sense of awe that we have in moving through our day, and a sense of, it might not be this way, right? What are the things that I can be grateful for or be in awe of during the day, so I don't get caught up in a self-confident kind of spiral of, I've got this. So that's what he's saying there. And then he turns it on that flip side, and sometimes one has the increased sense of fear or awe. This is the experience of the night. And so a person needs to strengthen their spirit and to trust in God. So I don't know about you, but sometimes at night, everything seems worse, right? The cloud of worry can come into my heart. My soul can keep me from sleeping. It can keep me awake. And so I have a lot of fear, and maybe awe also at like how incredible life is, how tenuous life is. And so the nighttime is an opportunity to bring in a little bit of the bitachon, or the trust that I feel during the day. What does it mean to infuse my night with that, and to infuse my day with a little bit of awesomeness, right? And so he says this is a meaning in the meaning of, when we read in the book of Exodus, in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And then he quotes Pirkei Avot, one of the earliest collections of rabbinic literature. He says, if there's no wisdom, there's no fear of God. When there's no fear of God, there's no wisdom. But so he's linking these two ideas, that's saying that we have to have a little bit of a sense of yirah in our lives, or we're actually not tapping into wisdom. And he continues to say just that. If one does not have awe of the divine, and they don't understand that in a split second, God can take from them their wisdom, then their wisdom is for naught. If there is no wisdom, there is no fear of God, as Pirkei Avot teaches, means that the one who doesn't have trust in the divine is always in fear, and that fear is not desirable. For true fear, awe is firm in the heart, and one trusts in God. Now, I know this is a dense text for us to be introduced to into our sit, but one of the things I'm so taken with in this is the spiritual question of, how can I bring more awe into my day, and how can I bring more of a sense of trust into my experience of night? And that's what I want to invite you in to sit with today. There may be one of those concepts that resonates more with you than the other. You may be put off by the word yirah in Hebrew, or the fear, and feel like, fear's not really where I'm being called to pay attention right now. That's okay too. It's a word that is hard to translate into English. Trust, surety, making firm our steps at a time when we're facing darkness, whether it's the darkness of night or the darkness of our souls, is something that these pillars are kind of inviting us into in the text. How can I bring what might be lacking in one part of my day? How can I lift that up? So I want to invite you into your seats to feel your pelvis, your body, your back making contact with what is firm, what is sure beneath you, that provides a sense of bitachon or surety, the ground that literally holds our bodies. And to awaken to our breath, the awe-inspiring, the awesome act of breathing. The reality of knowing that the breath is what makes it possible for our soul to be manifest in this body. And were it not for that breath, the body would not have soul in it. Maybe in a space that is light, that we can either feel or see light coming in, or we may be in a dark place, a dark room. Wherever we are in our space, in our bodies, whatever sensations are coming in, to welcome them as much as we can with a sense of bitachon, with a sense of security and sureness, even when we might feel fear. To know that we're not alone in this community, people who've gathered together to sit, to see what will unfold in our pillar of fire and our pillar of cloud in this moment. We'll sit for the next 10 minutes together and come back together for Mourner's Kaddish.
Thank you, Susan. We'll have a chance to share our experience and ask questions, reflect a little bit with Susan in a moment. Right now, we're going to have an opportunity for those who are reciting Morning Kaddish to do so. We'll put the text up. If you have someone you're remembering today who has passed away that you want to enter their name as we recite Kaddish together, please do so in the chat. And we'll open up also a chance for you to unmute if you'd like to join us in reciting Kaddish. All right. So if you want to join me, the text is on the screen. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabba Alma Divrach V'chayechon v'yom v'chyei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru
Amen.
Hey Shmei
Shmei
Rabba
Rabba Mevorach Le'alam Valmei Almaya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalam Shmei Dekudisha Brichu
Richu.
Hela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Hey Shlama Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen.
Amen.
Thank you. So invite you to remain here. If you need to leave, we wish you tzitchem l'shalom, farewell. Hope you can join us again on Thursday, tomorrow, because as I mentioned before, Juneteenth, our office is closed. So you're welcome to practice with us anytime on YouTube or on the Jewish Meditation for Everyone podcast. So Susan, thank you so much for sharing that teaching with us today. And I would imagine, I think I certainly I went to, and I would imagine for others, I'd be curious, what happened today or in this practice, thinking about yirah and this double meaning of fear and awe, and the relationship between that move and bitachon, trust and faith and daytime and nighttime. I mean, it's hard, to me, top of mind is certainly everything that's been happening since October 7th, and that those, I felt like that yin and yang pull of those two gestures is so present, this feeling of, on the one hand, tremendous fear, obviously, and also and trust, both, and this oscillation. And so I'm curious. I mean, this is always my first question to, as you know the drill, but I'm curious for you how this has been operating, or how this practice has been helpful for you, either today or on an ongoing basis. And I'm curious what for others as well, what might have come up for you in the practice. But we'll start with Susan. What curious?
Sure. Thank you, Josh. When I first found this commentary back on the seventh day of Passover, I'll speak personally. Certainly, for what's happening in a global sense and in Israel and Palestine continues to keep so many of us up at night, literally and figuratively, not even figuratively. It's hard to imagine what the families of the hostages are going through and the families of the soldiers who've fallen. I know for me, I have more reasons to be up at night now than I did back in April in my own life. And so I feel like I've been challenged anew with this of how do I transform night into from a time of being fearful or worried or both, into trying to bring bitachon or bring some trust into my being at a time when we actually have no reason to know that that's really possible, right? I mean, what on what grounds do we have to trust that, if we want to say everything's going to be okay, right? And to try to, despite that feeling, to try to lean into what I am sure of, right? I was even thinking during this sit of, many of us are familiar with the concept of feeling the firmness under our bodies that's holding us as we're sitting. But I thought to myself, how many times do I reflect on that at night when I'm in my bed and I'm lying there awake, right? Of like the gratitude for the bed holding up my body, right? So even in the face of yirah and fear and death and loss and potential loss, there is still something for me to be grateful for, right? There's still some sense of firmness that is there if I can open myself up to it.
It gives new meaning to a firm mattress. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to, like, we had a couple of comments here. Lori mentioned, I found great comfort in inhaling bitachon deep into my belly and feet, then exhaling a long exhale of awe, fully appreciating all that is so much bigger than me, so miraculous. It gave me a great sense of anava, of humility and gratitude. Yeah, just being able to take in the bitachon and exhale the gratitude. And I think it's really important, sometimes there's a danger, obviously, always in this practice. I feel like that that you can do spiritual bypass, that it's just about I want to feel better right now. And I think for me anyway, for the last many months, it's I've gotten a new appreciation of this isn't about necessarily feeling better. It's about being able to sit and be with what is. And I think leaning into that yirah piece of fear, that's a real thing, and being and allowing ourselves to feel that, and that our bodies are designed that way. There's actually utility in it, but that it can also, when it becomes pachad, when it becomes real fear that is shaking us. And I think Mark likes to teach a lot. The song that many of us have learned from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, Kol ha'olam kulo, the whole world is an air bridge. The ha'ikar lo lefached klal. The essence is, the main thing is not to fear at all. In the original, it's actually lo lehitpached klal, which in the original doesn't actually mean anything different, but in modern Hebrew means don't make yourself more afraid, right? Not to add the resistance.
Right.
So, yeah, I wonder.
Josh, I'm so glad you mentioned that
Yeah.
song and that text, because on Shabbat, when I was leading services, I finished with that song instead of Adon Olam, which is one of the songs that is popularly, done at the end of services. Because at the end of during the Shabbat morning service, I had a family walk into the congregation whose daughter was missing.
Mm.
And they asked me to say a prayer in the middle of I'd never met them before.
Mm.
And their daughter was missing, right? How does one find the bitachon in this, right? So that teaching of Mark's is so beautiful, to not be more afraid, like to not compound what is already real in our lives, right? To name it and to sit with it, but to not. And this family, by walking into a synagogue on Shabbat morning, sought community in a way that was such a response to the alternative of being more alone, more fearful, etc. So one of my favorite teachings. So glad you lifted that up.
And I think there's like real value. I think so many of us have also again rediscovered. Many people here probably already, have felt this, but we feel it even here is just, when we're experiencing that fear, to be able to be together, is already a soothing thing. I was talking to a colleague yesterday who was saying, it's such a low bar these days, but it's that if you can just be in a place where you feel like you're not crazy, where no one's gaslighting you, and you can just be in a place where you can be held, and feel like you're listened to. That itself is, just being in a non-toxic environment, which I hope that this sit has become for a lot of people. I know it has become. It is for a lot of people. Okay, we've got a few questions that have come in here. Laura asked the question, could you offer any other practical guidance as to how to move from the desire to feel more trust and surety to actually feeling it? And as I said, without minimizing the truth of the fear, especially in solitude. Susan, you got anything?
Well, it's not mine, of course, it's the traditions, but the interesting thing about this teaching by the Mea HaShiloach is that I actually excerpted it quite a bit for our sit today. But it actually, at the end of it, says that in the Torah, it says that the children of Israel walked on dry land in the sea, and elsewhere, I don't remember the exact citation, and elsewhere it says they walked on dry land in the sea, right? So there's this like contradiction of like, what is firm and what isn't firm. And so it's another just a beautiful idea of if you want to play with dry land and water, or if you want to play with fire and clouds, right? Of like, what are these two places, these on a continuum, and how can we bring more of one into another? So I think that's behind some of the questions. And I think for me, trusting comes in the motion, like it comes in the idea of being more like surfing. And this, I'm going to contradict myself with the firm mattress of lying on something firm at night. A lot of life is more surfing, right, than seeking solid ground. And so, I don't know, for me, it's like, can I trust the waves? Can I trust the shifting ground? Can I trust the water, or whatever metaphor you want, and not fight it, but go with it? And I find, and that means that things are constantly changing in our world. And at some point, I'm even trying to aspire to trust in that.
Yeah, beautiful. And there's a teaching here clearly about impermanence and being aware of what's real and what's impermanent, and how that operates in our perception. I want to respond just, Lori asked the question. I wasn't saying spiritual bypass around awe. Awe is a good, I'm saying sometimes, right? I certainly am guilty of this myself, is we sometimes practice as a retreat into, I don't want to deal with what's out there, so I just want to feel better right now. And sometimes we may need to do that. You need to, like, if we need to calm down or whatever it is. But if it's only about that and we never get to looking clearly at what is, right, then I think that's what I was referencing there. So and a lot of times we shy away, I think, from the fear. And so I really appreciate the value of emphasizing that in the teaching here. Eileen mentioned the notion of the second arrow teaching in Buddhism. Sure, absolutely, right. Yeah, a lot of good comments here in the chat. catching up.
Josh, there was a really big question up above about how can one overcome their fear of death.
Oh yeah, that was at the very beginning. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's
Very
a
all rolled
huge,
in after.
yeah, thank you to Dolores. I mean, I think, we're not going to come up with a satisfactory response to such an important and big question in these few minutes left, but I was thinking about in this liminal sense of it's this feeling of awe and gratitude, but also knowing, in the words of Mahashloch, that in 1 minute it can all be taken away from us. And I just keep coming back to I can be afraid of death, and I can also realize that every moment I breathe, or every moment someone else breathes, or every time a child doesn't go missing or a soldier isn't killed, that's also a moment for your awe of, wow, this is amazing that people live, that people survive, that people are found. Not always, doesn't happen always, but I don't know. I feel like there's that can help me with the fear of death, is to tap into your awe more frequently so that it translates as gratitude.
Yeah. And I think we practice, in order to notice those things in those moments. I haven't shared yet publicly, but last week my youngest son was in the hospital. He had an asthma attack on Monday night, and we had to go to the ER overnight. And thank God he's fine. He went to camp yesterday. It's all good. But when but I found myself at 2 a.m. sitting with him in the ER, as he's hooked up to a bunch of things and getting steroids and albuterol treatment and everything else, and looking at this little 11-year-old, body who's total trooper through the whole thing, but hooked up to everything. That I was exhausted and feeling all of these, huge range of emotions. And I did have a moment where I was like, wow, this is being able to be present with this. I was relying on things that I practice on a daily basis. And part of that is, gratitude and awe and reverence for look at thank God, we have the ability to treat this, right? And that there are medical folks who can do this and know exactly what to do. And so even in that moment of a lot of fear and uncertainty, I felt like there were certain muscles that I've been able to build, right? Where lo lahitpached, not to add to what's already, of course, there. It doesn't make it go away. It just allows me to be with it, and be present for him, as much as I could.
I'm glad he's doing better.
Yeah, thank you. So, thank you very much. Susan, this is such a valuable, wonderful teaching. Thank you. And it's always so good to have you here with us. And thank you to everybody for your conversation and your comments and your questions. So we'll be back on Thursday, wishing you a good Juneteenth observance tomorrow, whatever you're going to be doing. And